Hashem want from us? So the main mitzvah that we have is to remember how Hashem took us out of Mitzrayim, to remember Yetziat Mitzrayim. The question is, and there's a lot of Shakal V'Taya, Merem Mekomot, different rabbis argue about this. Why is it that Leil HaSeder is different than the rest of the year? Every single day and night, we have a mitzvah to remember that we left Mitzrayim. A lot of mitzvot in the Torah is dependent on the fact that we left Mitzrayim. Zechel Yetziat Mitzrayim, Zechel Yetziat, always remember Mitzrayim, we say the whole year. You always have to remember that you left Egypt. So what's so different about Leil HaSeder? It's the same mitzvah we do the whole year. Third question is, we say in the Haggadah like this. We say in the Haggadah, B'chol dor v'dor chayav adam, and it's based on a Mishnah and Pesachim, le'orot et atzmo ki ulu yetzer Mitzrayim. Every single generation, chayav, not suggestion, not reshut or ra'ui, chayav, you're obligated, adam, lirot at every individual, le'orot et atzmo, he has to imagine himself, try to use his imagination, ki hilu yetzer Mitzrayim, as if he left Egypt. Every single Leil HaSeder, we have a chiyuv, we have an obligation to try to picture ourselves and put ourselves in our mindset as if we left Egypt right now. Even though it happened so many years ago, we have a chiyuv. You know, they asked the Brisker Rav, the famous Yitzchak Zav Soloveitchik, they asked him, what is the hardest mitzvah of Pesach? And the Brisker Rav answered, the hardest mitzvah is this chiyuv in the Haggadah, that we are obligated to put ourselves in our mind and to go back thousands of years as if we just left Egypt. How is it even humanly possible? The Brisker Rav said you got to be a malach to try to put yourself in a situation. If the Haggadah said ra'ui, it's suggested, or it's good to, fine. But it says chayav. You're obligated to put yourself in a situation as if you just left Mitzrayim. How is it possible? So the Brisker Rav said the hardest mitzvah to be mekayem is to be yotzei yedei chova, this mitzvah, to go back as if now you left Mitzrayim. 2023, as if now you left Mitzrayim. Rav Moshe Sternbach, he should be a healthy B'ezrat Hashem ever sim shana. He said that one time he spent a Leil HaSeder with the Brisker Rav, and he said that the Brisker Rav suddenly saw him like sitting down. He was like thinking, and they asked him, "What do you think about?" What are you thinking about? He says, I'm trying to be Mikayim the mitzvah. I'm trying to imagine as if I just left Mitzrayim. Because the Rambam adds the word ata. He has the word now, meaning you should try to make believe, try to understand as if now you left Mitzrayim. He adds the word ata. He makes it even like, I guess you could say worse, even harder. Trying to make believe like now you left Mitzrayim. And he said, I'm trying to think. He said, it's very hard. And he said like a tefillah. He said like a prayer to Hashem. Hashem, help me to try to be Mikayim this chiyuv of trying to understand as if I left Mitzrayim and I'm trying to put myself with a picture as if right now we're leaving Egypt. But it was very hard for him. Tonight we'll try to be meyashev to answer what exactly is the chiyuv that we say in the Haggadah. B'chol dor v'dor chayav adam lirot atzmo ki'ilu hu yetza miMitzrayim. So the real answer is, not that I know Zohar, but Rav Mutzafi brings down a beautiful Zohar. Rav Mutzafi brings down that, wish I can find it over here. There's so many things here. Rav Mutzafi brings down a Zohar. He says that every single year we have a mitzvah to remember Yetzias Mitzrayim. However, Leil HaPesach, just to show you how scary Leil HaPesach is, he writes, Leil HaPesach, we have a chiyuv every moment. Where would it be now? Sorry guys, give me a second. Oh, see, it's good to read it inside. This is a Zohar, Parashat Vayekel, Daf Resh Bet Amud Bet. Listen to this, according to the Zohar Kadosh. The Heilige Zohar. Zohar says, Yesh shne mitzvot. There are two mitzvahs. Echad, sheyesh la'askir b'peh et nisei Yetzias Mitzrayim b'chol yom v'layla. The whole year you have to verbalize the fact that we left Mitzrayim, day and night. V'im iskirat Yetzias pa'am achat. If you mention the fact that you left Egypt, which we say in Kriya Shema, once, at least in the day and that night, you yotzei yedei chova, you already, you yotzei yedei chova in English, you already did the obligation of the mitzvah of remembering Mitzrayim. V'hasheni, and the second mitzvah of Mitzrayim, shemitzvah lesaper b'sipur Yetziat Mitzrayim b'Leil HaSeder. There's a mitzvah not lehaskir, not to remember that we left Egypt, but rather lesaper, to talk about it, to have a conversation, to speak in detail. B'Leil HaSeder. V'chol rega v'rega ma'alayla. Every single moment from Tzedek Kochavim and on. He goes 30 minutes after Shkib, that's his Osafa, not the Zohar. Every single rega, says the Zohar, from the Tzedek Kochavim of Leil HaSeder, you have a mitzvah not to remember that we left Mitzrayim. You have a mitzvah, lesaper b'Yetziat Mitzrayim. You know, there's two ways you can have a conversation with your wife. You could just be Yetziat Yedei Chova, and just say, yeah, I'm listening, yeah, fine, thank you very much. And then there's actually getting involved in the conversation and showing her that you actually try to listen to her and have a conversation. It's two different ways how you can talk to her. Lahavdil elef avdalot. One mitzvah the whole year is to remember that we left Mitzrayim. But what does it take? Remember, say it, I left Mitzrayim, zechet zet Mitzrayim. L'man tisku, we left Mitzrayim, Hashem gave us, Hashem took us out of the Eved HaParah to be Eved HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Once a day, once a night, you're good. Lela Sedel, there's a mitzvah, not just to remember once. Let's say the chovah, like do a favor. There's a mitzvah, lesapel. It should be the story of the day. A person should get into detail exactly what happened to Yetziat Mitzrayim. That's what's very important. The Chida writes. There's a famous rule. You can't just crash land the plane. There has to be like a whole strategy. You can't just land all the way from the top and boom. Our plane can't just go up like that. The plane has to go slowly up and slowly down. So too when it comes to the Yontav of Pesach and Sukkot, a person has to prepare. A person has to be mitkonen. You have to do the proper preparation to actually be Yotzei the Chovah properly at Leila Sedel. Leila Sedel is one of the holiest nights that we have in the year. If I can quote you over here, I'll quote it for you. Shocking words, what happens at Leila Sedel. Just remember to go back to that. I made a copy of it. For example, listen to this Gemara. The Gemara in Psachim, Kuf Tezayin. Rabbi Akiva will close the shuls twice a year. Can you imagine how scary that is? The Helig Rabbi Akiva. When would he close the shul? What does it mean close the shul? He would go to shul, people are learning, and tell them, Chevre, you gotta get out of shul, go home. Only twice a year, says the Gemara. Erev Yom Kippurim, to go have the Suda and prepare, and Leil HaSedel. And Tosafot over there says, what does it mean he kicked them out of shul? He says the minhag was, even after they prayed, everybody sat and learned, they weren't rushing home. Of course they went home to do the mitzvah, but they weren't rushing home. Rabbi Akiva came and said to Bet Midrash, Chevre, let's go, you gotta leave. Leil HaSedel. So there's only 2 times Rabbi Akiva felt that it's proper to take people out of shul to make sure you go faster to do the mitzvot. That is Erev Yom Kippurim and Leil HaSedel. It's actually also halacha. Maran in Siman Tov Ayin Bet, Seif Aleph writes that even though davening is very important, but at Leil HaSedel, try to rush through davening. Maran brings it down. The way the Mishnah Boy explained it, try to rush through davening. In Lakewood we have a minhag, based on halacha, this is a mistake. But we have a minhag in Lakewood that we daven mincha, and then we take a break, like the rabbi says like a drasha, he gives like a whole speech, and only after Tzedek Kochavim Rabbeinu Tam that we start our vit. Let the Erev Pesach, not the second night, the first night. Now, Lefi Halacha, that's a mistake. Because if you Maran and Shulchan Aruch, you better go home before the kids start falling asleep. Because the whole concept of Haggadah and the whole concept of Pesach is for the children. And if the children are going to go to sleep, they're going to be too tired, what did you do? What did you gain? So therefore, Maran and Shulchan Aruch writes that you should try to daven earlier and make sure you're home by Tzedek Kochavim so you can start the Haggadah. You can't start the Haggadah before Tzedek Kochavim. Don't say Kiddush before Tzedek Kochavim. But make sure you're home by Tzedek Kochavim so you can start right away. Why? Because we don't want the kids to fall asleep. Why is it so important for the kids not to fall asleep? Because the whole point of the Haggadah and the whole point of Pesach is for the children to be up and tell them what it means to be a Jew, what it means that we left Mitzrayim and now we're Avadim with the servants of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. That's how important Leil HaSedel is. Rabbi Akiva only twice a year felt you got to leave early. Stop your learning to go to the mitzvot faster. What is it? Erev Yom Kippurim and Leil HaSedel. This shows us how tremendous Leil HaSedel is and needs preparation. So the Chida says a person should prepare before Pesach. The Chida is actually Meramez. He wrote a lot of Sfarim. And one is Agadot. He wrote that a person should try to create his own costumes. Try to act out Makat Dam, Makat Svadea. Try to make a show in the house. Because that is the mitzvah min Torah for the children. The mitzvah min Torah is try to bring as if we just left Mitzrayim. Chayav Adam b'chol dovado le'erot atzmo ki'ilu ata yetzai Mitzrayim, as if now you left Egypt. Says the Chida, how do you do that? You have to act it out. You have to make a show. You have to talk about it. And so the Zohar answers. The whole year we have a mitzvah to remember Yetzias Mitzrayim. Rak lisko. Leil Pesach, we have a mitzvah lesaper, to actually say over the story in detail, la'at la'at. And when every time you say it in detail, you get a mitzvah. So how many words can a person say in 1 minute? Let's guess. Let's say, I don't know what 100, how many words you can say in 1 minute? 100 words, let's say be'erich. Let's say 100 words, probably more. If a person is talking divrei Torah and Leil HaSedel, from Tzedek Kochavim ad alot hashachar, if a person talks divrei Torah and sipurei Yetziat Mitzrayim, you make a mitzvah, a mitzvah, a mitzvah. The rest of the year, you don't have that mitzvah with remembering leaving Mitzrayim. There's only one night a year, and that is Leil HaSedel, lesaper b'sipur Yetziat Mitzrayim. There's a famous rule. You are what you talk about. How do you know a person loves cars? If the guy's always talking about cars. How do you know a person loves going to Florida? if all he talks about is trip going to Florida. And that's what David HaMelech wrote. Ma hafti Toratecha, kol hayom isichoti. What does that mean? Ma hafti Toratecha. How do you know with what? Thank you. With what do you know? Bema. How do you know? Ahafti Toratecha. How do you know one loves Torah? A lot of people can say, I love Torah, I love Torah. How do you know a person loves Torah? Kol hayom isichoti. If all day he talks Torah, you are what you talk about. You love Torah so much, let me hear how many divrei Torah you talk about. Ma hafti Toratecha. How do you know? Kol hayom isichoti. You are what you talk about. Leil HaSeder, we have a mitzvah. What is that mitzvah? Sichati, the sicha, the conversation should be Yetzias Mitzrayim, the sapel. And according to the Zohar, this is a pachad. Every moment you talk about Yetzias Mitzrayim, Mikayim a mitzvah. You know what that means? It's something to prepare for. But a person can't just crash land into a Lila Pesach and expect to actually know what to talk about in Lila Pesach. It takes preparation. A person should review the makot before. It took me around a week just to learn Bi'iyun Makat Dam. There's so much information going. There's tons of information. Now I'm prepared with divrei Torah. What to do with my children? It's already something else. The Gemara says you should try to give a lot of candy to the children, even before Kiddush. You're allowed to give them, especially after Kiddush. You're allowed to give candy to the children. Make sure they're up. The pasuk says. It just reminded me of a var. But remind me to go back a couple times. Okay, let's give you your homework. I want to share with you a beautiful Rechaim Vital. But before that, I want to share a beautiful pshat. The pasuk B'Yetzias Mitzrayim. Parashat Bo says like this: V'leman tesaper be'oznei benecha uven benecha. Make sure you mesaper. You say over the story. Didn't say ledaber, just talk. Sipur, it has to be gishmak. It has to be, it's hard over. There's pretty bad storytellers out there. You'd rather them not say the story because you killed the whole story. A story you have to elaborate, you have to act it out. There's good storytellers and there's pretty bad ones. I'm a pretty bad storyteller because I'm not into details. But there are very good storytellers out there. Over here the pasuk says, "V'leman tesaper be'eznei benecha uven benecha." Say over the story to your children in the ears, ba'oznaim of your children and your grandchildren. Says Amar Sheshtarmech an obvious question. He quotes the Rav Kahanim and the Panovich Rav, who built Yeshivat Panovich. He says, why does a pasuk have to say be'oznei in the ears? Where else? Were you talking up their nose? What does that mean? He says, leman tesaper be'oznei benecha. Obviously you're talking in the ears. Why does a pasuk have to be mechalik, be'oznaim, talk in the ears of your children? So he says a beautiful vart. He says the whole concept of Pesach, Leil HaSeder, leaving Mitzrayim, is to educate the next generation and ourselves, emunah and HaKadosh Baruch Hu, to believe in Hashem. Hashem runs the world from A to Z. There's no such thing as nature. Nature is a miracle run by HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Nature, Teva, is a nes, she'itraganu elav. Nature is miracles, we got immune to, we got used to, but it's still a miracle every second. Hashem runs the world from A to Z. But sometimes it's hard to hear it. There's so much noise. If you try to talk to somebody and the room is very loud, let's say you're by a wedding and you're by the hall over there and you're trying to call your friend, if you're not going to scream, he's not going to hear you. If you're going to talk to him as if he's in front of your face and there are people passing by making noise, he's not going to hear you. When there's noise, either you talk louder or you go over to the person and you talk to him. Says Amar Sheshtar B'Chavir, the pasuk is saying, you know how you pass over emunah to the next generation? V'leman tesaper be'oznei benecha. How do you educate them? The next generation that Hashem runs the world, and Hashem took us out of Mitzrayim, and He did the 10 makot, the 10 plagues, and we are His slaves. We're the avadim HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and He gave us a Torah. Our job is to serve Hashem. How do you educate the next generation? You have to make sure to tell to their ears, meaning make sure they're listening because there's a lot of noise in the streets. These children, you can tell them divrei Torah. A second later, they go on social media, they tell them something else. The Rebbe in the classroom can tell them Torah, 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 no money, everything is about Torah. But then they go on their phones, they go on all these different websites, and unfortunately they get influenced and they see that everybody's running after money, everybody's running after fashion, everybody's running after food. It confuses them. It's very hard for a child to have strong emunah where he's educated by his parents one thing, and then he goes outside his house or even in his pocket and he has a whole world tells him not like that. It's not an easy battle. So the pasuk says, "V'leman tesaper be'oznei benecha." Make sure your son is listening, meaning ba'oznaim, hold his ear, not literally like pull his ear out, but make sure his ear is listening because there's so much noise. If you're going to be vague about emunah with your children, unfortunately, it might not work. There's so much noise, so many distractions. You have to go over to them across the hall. You have to avoid the noise and talk to the ears. Hashem really exists. This is not a joke. God really exists. Life is about serving Hashem, Torah and Mitzvot. Nothing else matters. Only HaKadosh Baruch Hu. That's what the pasuk says. V'leman tesaper be'oznei benecha. The Brisker Rav For some reason I'm quoting him a lot tonight. But he said that he got most of his Yirat Shamayim from what? From his mother sitting by his bedside telling him Sipuret Tzadikim when he went to sleep. Did you hear that? He got most of his Yirat Shamayim from his mother telling him stories of Tzadikim when he was a child going to sleep. What does that tell you? She gave him special attention, and she put an emphasis on tzaddikim, how they lived their lives. Not only reading halachot in the Torah, but actually looking how tzaddikim really practiced the halachot. And she told it to his ear. She wasn't on her phone while she's telling him a story, reading a cookbook. She really spoke to her child. She gave him the attention he needs and told him, hello, we're serious. This is serious stuff. Hashem really exists. So Moshe Yirat Shamayim, says Rabbi Skov, I got from my mother telling me tzaddikim stories when I went to sleep. I think that's a pele. That's a pachad. Because we can send our kids to Jewish schools, we can pay tuition, which is very, very important, but at the end of the day, it could be they're not getting their attention of having real emunah. So we're paying for education, paying, which is very important, and we're working very hard. We keep Shabbat, we keep Chagim, we put on tzitzit, we put on tefillin, with a minyan, everything is kosher, but everything can stay on the outside of the son and actually not enter his heart. So the pasuk says it's very important. Make sure be'ozne benecha. Make sure you're talking to your children. Make sure they really believe in what's going on. Do you really have emunah? The truth is, you see it in the parents. You know, Zamir Cohen said a beautiful mashal. He says at home, let's say when you go to a wedding. When you go to a wedding, a person tries to eat, okay? But once the camera guy comes around, recording for the wedding video, a guy puts his fork down, as if he's not eating, mazal tov, mazal tov. When you're on camera, you act different. Says of Zamir Cohen, in the house, and this is very scary, but it's truth. In the house as parents, when children are around, the camera is on 24/7. The children are watching and listening to everything. The cameras are on 24/7. The way you talk, what really your priority is, what you love, what you don't love, your children, you think they're not watching, they know everything about they know exactly what the parents believe in. You know, there's a very big rabbi in Lakewood. His name is Ramesh Chaim Khan. He's one of the poskim in Beit Medrash Gavoa in the big yeshiva there. He's a very big rabbi. I have the zechut to know him personally. When his father passed away, he said over by the Shiv'ah. He grew up in the Upper West Side of Manhattan. It was a bunch of brothers, and three of them are all Tamidei Chachamim. One is a Dayan in Lakewood, one is in Eretz Yisrael, and Ramesh Chaim Khan is a big posek in Lakewood. But they're all tremendous Tamidei Chachamim. They really know Torah. He said over by his father's Shiva, he's like, I want to tell you something. Do you know, until we were adults to understand life, we had no clue what our father does as a living, what his parnasah was. Not that Chas v'Shalom he did anything shady, that's what I'm trying to say. God forbid, Chas v'Shalom. But the point was, he was trying to say that our father, he worked, full time. He came home and he learned, and he talked to us on learning. How was your school? He never spoke about his job. And we noticed he never spoke about his job, so we didn't know what he did. And what did that show us? The job is not important. He didn't speak about it. It's not like he came home, today at work I made this amount of money, tomorrow I'm going to do this and this. It wasn't important. It was just like, did you count how many steps right now you step when you came inside the shul? You count how many steps are here? No, because nobody cares about how many steps there are. If it's not important to you, it's not in your mind. To his father, working wasn't important. Of course, he worked, but it wasn't important enough for him to actually mention when he comes home. And the children saw through their father, like, wait a minute, some money is not so important to you, Abba. What is important to you? Torah, Torah. They all became Tamidei Chachamim. You hear that? What's important for you, you always talk about. If it's not so important, why are you talking about it? That's what David Melech writes. Ma hafti Toratecha. Who loves Torah? Let's see how much Torah you talk about. Let's see. And that's the mitzvah of Leila Seder. Lesaper. The pasuk says lesaper. Say over the story in detail. Put your heart into it. Act it out. Be real about it. Not just remember we left Mitzrayim. Talk about leaving Mitzrayim. And why is this so important? Because when you detail Yetzias Mitzrayim, you're showing yourself and your children that you really care about it. That you put time into it. And when you really care about it and your children see it, that means they're going to believe in it and they're really going to have true emunah and HaKadosh Baruch Hu. I want to share with you a chidush that I thought of this week in the Rambam, and tell me if you agree. The Rambam writes like this. The Rambam writes, did I make a copy? I don't even know. Tell me if you agree to this chiddush. Any questions, Rabbatai? You guys are way too quiet. Yeah? That means everyone is listening? I appreciate you coming. And did I make a copy of the Rambam? Maybe not. Okay, but the Rambam quoted the Lashon of the Haggadah anyways. It says like this, B'chol dor v'dor, chayav adam lirot et atzmo ki'ilu hu yetza Mitzrayim. שנאמר, והגעתי לבנך ביום לאמור, בעבור זה עשה השם לי בצאתי ממצרים. שלא את אבותינו בלבד, not only did Hashem take our forefathers out, from the generations before, Ga'al HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Hashem also redeemed ela'af otanu, He also redeemed us, Ga'ali ma'em, because if you would still be in Mitzrayim, if Hashem would not take us out of Mitzrayim, we would still be enslaved to Paro. So the Achron in the commentators asked the question. We're talking about so many years later, Paro is not going to be around. Even if Hashem would not take us out of Mitzrayim then, Paro by now will not be around. Yeah, Paro is the title for a king, so there'll be new Paro, but it's fair to assume that no country, no nation in the world lasted for that long. Even Napoleon the Great, which everybody thought was like the guy, eventually he himself got killed and everything was destroyed. Italy, Greece, Europe, everything went down. Egypt, everything went down. So it's fair to assume that by this day, right now, Tavshin Pei Gimel 2023, according to the Goyim, Egypt will not be around as a superpower nation, and Paro will not be around. So why does that God say, if Hashem would not take us out then, we would still be enslaved to Paro? Tell me if you agree to this pshat, but I think the pshat is this. When it says we'll be enslaved to Paro, it means the enslavement mindset. You see, Mitzrayim is not so far-fetched. We know people that are literally enslaved as we talk. They're enslaved to society. It's an unbelievable thing. Hashem writes the Torah clearly. Judaism is clear as day. Torah, mitzvot. Averot, don't do averot, do mitzvot. Follow Shabbat, put on tefillin. But you can have a person, whether it's their fault or not, but you can have a person that follows society, his friends, and the whole world, and not follow Hashem. If society tells him to jump, he jumps. Society tells him sit, he sits. That's called enslavement mentality. They don't think big about themselves. They don't think great about themselves. You know how often that happens? I just had it with a teenager the other day. I give a class for teenagers in Lakewood that are a little bit, I guess the word is struggling, but I'm also struggling, so I don't know what their word is. But he's a little bit struggling, and he didn't show up. And his father told me, make sure every time he doesn't show up to class, you call him up. So I'm by the class with all the boys there. I was like, I got to call up this boy. I call him up. I was like, where are you? He's like, what was his words? I'm not up for it today or something. Today is not the day. Something like slang. I know what they're saying. I was like, what do you mean you're not up for it? He's like, I said it's very hard for me. I was like, you think it's easy for me to come give a class to you guys? You know how hard it is? You have to keep on going. It's not like they're all quiet like you. Over there you have to fight with these guys. You think it's easy? He's like, no, we're different. I was like, what's the difference me and you? Why are we different? He's like, I know, we're just built different. I was like, we're not built different. Just I'm choosing to do the right thing and you're not. The machlokes between me and you is I'm choosing right over wrong, you choosing wrong over right. He's like, no, it's not the way I am. I always was like that. I'm not that type of guy. I was like, do you realize you're a slave? You're a slave to something that tells you in your mind, in your psychology, your mind, whatever it is, that you can never grow. You know, there's a Arizal, the way Moshe Shtermach was like the Arizal. It's a very scary Arizal. But I actually just learned today that according to the numbers, we know 4/5 of the Jews left Mitzrayim. That means only 1/5 left, which is like 20%, not a lot. If you make the calculations, the Machloket, the Midrashim, how many Jews actually left Mitzrayim? Is it 3 million? Is it 12 million? There's one Midrash that says around, if you make the calculation, 18 million. Listen to this. 18 million Jews died by Makat Choshech, by the plague of the darkness, before we left Mitzrayim. 18 million Jews, and they buried them within 3 days. Ribono shel olam, that's triple the Holocaust. 18 million Jews, isn't that a pachad? Isn't that scary? Why did Hashem do that? There has to be a reason. What's the pshat? So one time I asked the Mashgiach of the Mir, his name is Rabbi Ginsburg, who's the grandson of Rabbi Chatzko Levenstein, big Mashgiach, or Yecheskel. So I asked him, listen, Hashem killed them because I guess they weren't the best Jews. They didn't want to leave Egypt. Whatever the Midrashim says, different pshatim, they weren't willing to receive the Torah. They were happy the way they were. In fact, the Midrash says that they believed in Hashem. They said, no, we believe in Hashem. We saw the 10 Makot. But to actually leave Egypt and go through the Midbar, the desert, and you know what I mean, and the Nanei Kavod, and get the man, and then receive the Torah, and eventually enter Israel. Nah, we're not going for that stuff. We'd rather stay in Egypt. That was their mindset. We're not going through all the pain. Let's just stay in Egypt with the Goyim. So Hashem felt for that mindset, not wanting to grow, when you have an opportunity to grow, not wanting to change and think big and become a big tzaddik and receive the Torah, that itself deserves a death penalty. So Hashem wiped him out right away. So I asked Rabbi Ginsburg, I said, but why kill them? Just let them stay. Why do you have to kill them? They don't want to leave. Don't leave. Your loss. It's our zechut to go get the Torah. If they don't want to leave those Jews, keep them there. When I asked him that question, he grabbed me by my shirt over here like this, Rabbi Ginsburg, and he says, what kind of sharla is that? What kind of question is that? I was like, what do you mean? Why kill them? They don't want to leave. Keep them there. But you have to kill 18 million people? He says, what do you mean? We don't just live If you don't live for a purpose of growth, you don't just live, you rather go to the next world. Hashem saw that they don't have a purpose anymore. They don't want to grow. So Hashem is like, okay, so why are you here? I hire you to grow. If you're not growing, so what are you here? So Hashem had to kill them. But he grabbed me by my neck and he asked me, what kind of question is that? We think we would just live? Just let them be? What do you think this is? America, let them be? It doesn't work like that. There has to be a purpose. If they're not fulfilling their purpose, Hashem said, let me do a chesed before it gets worse. Let me take them to Olam Haba. That's a tremendous lesson. A person always has to want to grow more and more and more. Not wanting to grow and not thinking big about yourself, how you can be such a big tzaddik and a big tamid chacham, is an enslavement mentality. You're telling yourself you're never going to grow, you're small, it's never going to happen, it's not who you are, your family is not a good family. You know, it's a pella. The Medrash says, Moshe Rabbeinu, remind me to go back, Abotai. Then I want to finish off the Chaim Vital. The Medrash says, the Moshe Rabbeinu, we know, the Torah tells us, receive the Torah. Says the Medrash, a beautiful question. Moshe Rabbeinu, where was you raised? If you were ask me where I was raised, I'll tell you. I was raised in Los Angeles, I was raised in Lakewood, too many places, but at least I can tell you around where I was raised. Ask Moshe Rabbeinu, where were you raised? Moshe Rabbeinu will tell you, in Egypt, in the palace of Paro, with Goyim, with all the Tumah. Remember, Egypt was the capital of black magic and all the bad spirits. They did horrible things over there. They killed people with it. They did horrible things. Tumah, impurity, was on steroids in Egypt. It was the empire of Tumah. That's what's called Mitzrayim and Lashon Mitzrayim. They had boundaries. They're able to close you off and not think right and all these weird things. It's a very, very dangerous place. So Moshe Rabbeinu, where did he grow up? He grew up in Bnei Brak? Did he grow up in Yerushalayim? Did he grow up in Cedarhurst and Lakewood? No. Moshe Rabbeinu grew up in Egypt. Not only in Egypt, in the capital, meaning in the house, the palace of Paro, where all the nonsense was going on. And what ends up happening? Moshe Rabbeinu is one that receives the Torah, and he's the greatest Navi, prophet we're ever going to have for generations ever. Animam means Moshe Rabbeinu is the greatest Navi that will ever happen. Says the Midrash, why did Hashem do that? To teach us that it doesn't make a difference what your surroundings are. It doesn't make a difference who your family is. It doesn't make a difference where you live, technically. If a person wants to grow, he can even receive the Torah like Moshe Rabbeinu. It's a Midrash Shekut Shimoni. Moshe Rabbeinu was the greatest prophet, grew up next to Goyim, to teach us just because you're next to Goyim doesn't mean you cannot be the next Gadol Adar. Doesn't mean you can be the greatest tzaddik possible. Of course, stay away from situations to live in such places. It's always good to avoid nisyonot and tests and be next to tzaddikim. But it doesn't mean just because I'm there, it means I can never make it, I can't be matzliach. If you think like that, if a person thinks like that, he has the enslavement mentality, you have to break open that cage and tell yourself, I can become great. Not because it's some fairy tale and make-believe shot. It's a reality. Every single person can become a huge tzaddik and has a huge potential to connect with the Kadosh Baruch Hu. And that's what I want to say, the chiv is over here. Bechol dor vador, chayav adam lirot et atzmo. Atzmo is lashon yechid, singular term. It doesn't say every single generation, let's look at ourselves, atzmenu, plural. It says, et atzmo, says the Haggadah, and the Rambam brings it down. Et atzmo, every person should look at himself. Ki'ilu, hu yatzah mitzrayim, you left Egypt. You're not a Jew only because everybody else is Jewish. Hashem wants you to serve. Hashem wants you to understand you left Mitzrayim as an individual. Don't only serve Hashem because your parents serve Hashem or your rabbis or your society. Serve Hashem because Hashem wants you to serve Him as a single Lashon Yachid. That's where it says, Chayav Adam lirot et atzmo, that you yourself left Mitzrayim. I had a friend the other day who got his license, a 16-year-old. He was so excited this guy got his license, or his permit, whatever it is. I was like, what are you so excited about? So many people can drive you. There's so many people that drive. So you got your license. Okay, now you can drive on your own. He's like, no, now I can drive on my own. I went through the test. Now I can drive the car. I can brake and press gas and the whole thing. So I thought to myself, this is Pshat in the Haggadah. Yitziat Mitzrayim shouldn't be, yeah, we left Mitzrayim. Yeah, I remember Avotenu left it, and Chamavadia left, and Chafetz Chaim, and my grandfather, and Rash, and Ram. Yitziat Mitzrayim, you know how it is. We all know about it. Every single year we talk about it. We left Egypt. It has to be that a person has to think to himself on his own and go through the whole course. How you left Mitzrayim, how Hashem took you out of Mitzrayim. You sit and read through the Chumash. You read the Psukim, you learn the Midrashim, you try to sit and think, wait a minute, why would Hashem take me out of Mitzrayim? What does Hashem want for me? What is my goal in life? Don't think vague that my whole family left Mitzrayim. The Haggadah is telling you, lirot et atzmo, yourself, it is a singular term, Lashon Yachid. You have to look into Yetzias Mitzrayim. You yourself search and learn Torah and make sure you know the Psukim well. Why we left Mitzrayim? What happened at Temakot? What does Hashem want from you? Every single person on his own level and his own relationship with the Kadosh Baruch Hu. Not vague, at that small singular term. And when a person fulfills that and understands that he left Mitzrayim, he himself, Hashem wants him out, and Hashem wants him not to be an Eved and to serve Hashem and receive the Torah. Once you have that, you're out of the enslavement mentality of Paro. So when it says, if Hashem did not take us out, we still be slaves of Paro in 2023, what it means to say is the Paro mentality, that enslavement of, no, we're still avodim, we're slaves, we can't receive the Torah, we can't grow. So when we say that if Hashem would have kept us there, we still would have been slaves, it would have meant we never would have received the Torah, and we still wouldn't have the opportunity to reach and get close to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Now that we left Mitzrayim, we have the opportunity to grow and get close to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. So when the Agadah says, B'chol dover do, we ask the question, Chayav, you're obligated to say, I left Mitzrayim. And we said the Brisker Rav had a hard time understanding this. How are you mikayim such a halacha? Chayav, you're obligated to understand you left Mitzrayim. The answer is, Rabotai, every single Leila Sedel, a person has to think to himself, am I in that enslavement mentality? Do I really believe that Hashem took me out of Mitzrayim thousands of years ago? If I really believe in that, I'll be a different person. If we truly believe that Hashem took us out, me individually, not only my family, me individually, I am out of the enslavement mentality. Once you know Hashem wants you to serve Him, that person is going to grow and grow and grow. Because what does a person tell himself? Why should I be a tzaddik? There's plenty of rabbis, people in Kolel, this guy's a tzaddik. We have Chacham Ovadia, we have the Chafetz Chaim. Why should I be a tzaddik? That's an issue. Hashem wants you to be a tzaddik. Hashem wants you to grow because He took you out of Mitzrayim. That's why it says, B'chol dovado chayav adam lirot et atzmo. You're obligated to tell yourself, Hashem took me out of Mitzrayim. Every single Leila Sedel. You got to tell yourself, why am I not in Egypt? Why am I in this world? I'm in this world to serve Hashem. And we left Mitzrayim because we're not slaves anymore to society. We are the Jewish nation. Yetziat Mitzrayim was the birth of the concept of Judaism. That now we are here to serve Hashem. All we have to do is impress HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Nobody else in the world. Once you know that mindset, you're out of enslavement. You know, the other day I spoke in a college. And I end up with this. I spoke in a college, and they were telling me that the Torah is full of restrictions. Basically, enslavement. So I told them, so then they wanted to say the whole concept of God, Chas V'Shalom, doesn't exist, whatever. A bunch of lazy people. So I told them this. I said, okay, tell me, let's see how smart you are. I happen to know this because I did my research, because I have to. I told them, what is the number one country in the world that's atheists? Number one. Nobody had a clue, but the answer is China, if you Google it. China is the number one atheist country in the world. So I told them, listen, the Chinese people, now that they're atheists, they're not enslaved to God. But who are they enslaved to? The government. Toda Rabba. In life, you're going to be a slave. The question is who? Government, social media, celebrities, sports. Some people are enslaved to sport. You know, the other day at Team Lost, I don't know what was going on. I had people in my house, in my younger brother's house. There were some people were like really like upset, and it looked like they were crying. I hope they weren't, but it looked like they were, as if like what happened? You know, that's called enslavement. If you're able to put so much emotions on a sport, that means that your neshama is connected to something it shouldn't. You're enslaved. You're like obsessed. It's like an alcoholic. An alcoholic doesn't mean to take the cup and drink. He really doesn't want it, but he's enslaved to the cup. He's enslaved to the cup. That's called enslavement. A person who every second goes on his phone and looks at social media, or he doesn't want to be too much into sports, but he gets so involved when he hears of it, that means you're enslaved. You're enslaved. Or if your friends tell you to go to a certain spot for vacation, even though you can't afford it, and you still go, you're enslaved. That's called enslavement. If the government tells you, put on a mask, take off a mask, do this, and right away a person listens 100%, okay, I'm not getting into details, if a person listens blindly 100%, you're enslavement to the government. In life, you're always going to be enslaved. The question is to who? To who? If you're a tzaddik, if you're zocheh, if you merit, you choose that your enslavement, power, and talents that you have is to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. We chose to serve Hashem. We want to serve Hashem. We are the freest people in the world. Because we chose not to be enslaved to the rest of the world, rather to be enslaved to God, to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. What's better than Hashem being your boss? What's better than the Torah telling you what to do? I need some guy sitting behind the computer telling me what the rules are? No! Hashem tells you what the rule is. I'm the freest person in the world. Being a slave is a bad thing only because you're enslaved to a human. Because why is the human better than me? So it really is a pretty bad thing to be a slave. But being an Eved Hashem is the greatest compliment ever. To serve Hashem, what's better than that? I'll give you a mashal. I said it many times. Maybe I said it over here. I'll give you a mashal. Imagine, let's say Chacham Ovadia Yosef, the Heilige Chacham Ovadia Yosef. I never met him, I wish, but imagine he calls me up, he tells me, Yaakov, come to my house today, I need somebody next to me to help me with the Sfarim. I'll run. I'll walk on four, like this kacha, I'll walk to go be Chacham Ovadia Yosef. And then he tells me, give me that sefer, give me that sefer, give me that sefer. I'm there for a few hours. Imagine afterwards, I go to him and tell him, Chacham Ovadia, $100 for the service. $100, $100. That'll be very disrespectful. You know why it's disrespectful? Because you had the zechut to help Chacham Ovadia Yosef. I'm nowhere near Chacham Ovadia Yosef. So you helping him is a compliment. If the guy was some businessman sitting behind a desk, it's pretty offending. Why are you better than me? Okay, well, it is. It's not easy. But Chacham Ovadia Yosef, Zechita! You married to help Chacham Ovadia Yosef, and you go ask for $100. Says the Mishnah Pekei Avot, Al tiyu ke'avodim misham shemetara v'menat lekabel pras. You're gonna get rewarded. There's gonna be a reward, but don't do it for the reward. Why? Because serving Hashem in the first place is the greatest reward. Don't be an eved that's doing it for the reward, meaning to get paid. Because if you're doing it only to get paid, that means you don't realize what it means to serve God in the first place. The greatest payment is the fact that you have the ability to actually follow the halachot and listen to Hashem. So the Mishnah says, Al tiyu ke'avadim misham shemetara v'menat lekabel pras. Because the whole concept of serving Hashem already is the greatest gift. And if you're doing it for the gift, that means you don't chap what you're doing. You know what it means to serve Hashem, Ribbono Shel Olam? You know what it means to serve HaKadosh Baruch Hu? And I mean it. There's no greater honor to serving Hashem. If I was a guy, I'll be extremely bored. Life will be very boring. Hashem gave us a zechut to be Yehudim. Hashem gave us a zechut to leave Mitzrayim. And we have to give that feeling to our children, to the next generation. Because the next generation, as we see, has tremendous tests. Tremendous tests. The only way you can catch them, like the Pasuk says, it's unbelievable. You have to make sure it's sipul, you say with a story, with a passion, with love, not just dibul. Don't just talk. You have to say with a passion, like you're saying over a story. Leman tesaper emuna to your children, be'ezneim in their ears, in the actual oznaim, be'ezne benecha in the ears of your child. Why the ears of your child? Make sure they're listening. Make sure you're passing emuna to the next generation. Because if they have emuna, no matter what's going to happen around them, nothing is going to be able to push them off and not follow Hashem chas v'shalom. When they have real belief in Hashem, and how do you give them the real belief in Hashem? When you tell them. The Agadah tells us Hashem wanted you out of Mitzrayim, singular term. Of course we serve Hashem because our parents served Hashem and the greatest rabbi served Hashem. But another reason why you got to serve Hashem is because Hashem wants you to serve Him. He wants you to serve Him. Hashem wants you specifically. What you can accomplish, nobody else could, so don't mess up. Don't just say, don't worry, someone else will learn Torah. No, the Torah that you can learn, no one else can do. So achayut, the responsibility is on you. Don't mess up. Hashem wants you to serve Him. When you give confidence in the children, when you teach them how much Hashem cherishes them, it will give them the chiyut, the life to actually really want to serve Hashem. Their emunah will be strong. I'm going to end up with a mashal, even though I said that 20 times, but I'm really going to end up with a mashal. Rosh Hashanah Pincus says over our mashal, just to show you how Hashem loves every single person as an individual. He says, imagine you have a father that sends his son to a faraway yeshiva. Okay, let's say we're in New York. He sends his son to Chicago. He goes to visit his son. He gets on a plane. He goes to visit his son. Parks his car, gets inside the building. He opens up the Bet Midrash, the shul, and he's looking for his son. Let's say his son's name is Reuven. He's looking for Reuven, he can't find him. He's looking. He sees a lot of boys are sitting, learning Gemara, for a Seder, the Kol Torah, they're fighting in Gemara, Rashi, Tosafot. But he's looking for his son, he can't find his son. The Rosh Hashiva sees that the father walks in and he's looking around. Rosh Hashiva gets up from his chair and approaches the father. And he says, how can I help you? He's like, listen, I flew from New York, where's my son Reuven? The Rosh Hashiva is looking around, he can't find Reuven. Rosh Hashiva turns to the father and says, what does it make a difference? Look how many other kids are learning. Look, this guy's learning, this guy from Los Angeles is learning, this guy from Morocco is learning, this guy from Israel. So many boys are learning. He's like, I want to see my son Reuven. Don't worry about it. Look how many other guys are learning. Is that going to talk to the father? No. The father wants to see his son Reuven learning. Akadosh Baruch Hu Rabotai, like the Mishnah Pekei Avot says, Bechol v'yom v'yom, every single day a bat kol, by the way, comes out and speaks to our neshama. If a person has the zechut, he's able to hear that. But a bat kol, a heavenly force, comes to Shemaim, and he tells that person, maybe today the person is going to learn Mi'al Bonasher Torah. Maybe today that person is going to learn properly and not embarrass the Torah. Maybe today that person will be Chozeh b'teshuvah. Every single day Hashem walks in, Kavayalcha, quote unquote, and Hashem looks around and says, no, where is my son? Is he improving? Is he learning Torah? Is he doing mitzvot? Telling Hashem there's a whole Lakewood, telling Hashem there's a whole Brooklyn, there's a whole Cedar Hills, there's a whole Israel, people learning Torah, of course it helps. But Hashem still wants to see that person learning Torah. I want to see my boy learning Torah. HaKadosh Baruch Hu is unlimited. His love for every single individual is unlimited. Once a person knows Hashem wants him to learn, Hashem wants him to improve, and Hashem wants him to serve HaKadosh Baruch Hu for the Torah, that will give a person confidence. And when you have confidence in Emunah and Hashem, no matter what test comes your way, that person will be strong. And that is the job of Leil HaSeder. The job of Leil HaSeder is, Rabotai, to come in and then come out different. We're coming in maybe forgetting who we are, our true identity as Yehudim, as servants and sons and daughters of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. The point of the Seder is to come out to remind yourself in a refreshing course. We are in this world to serve Hashem. Hashem took us out of Mitzrayim to tell you, you are not enslaved to the world. You're here to serve God. Hashem says, I created the world. I give you money. I give you health. I give you children. Everything is the HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Maybe it sounds like an easy thing, but how many people really believe it in the heart? Like Rav Dessler says, you can have a Tamid Chacham b'sechel, but you don't have a Tamid Chacham b'lev. You can have a person that knows Torah in his mind, but his lev is empty. Ay, ay, ay. Can you imagine that? The person says, yeah, I believe in Hashem, of course, but the heart, if I live. The point of Leil Pesach is to make sure our lev, our hearts, is connected with the Secha, to remind yourself, Chayav Adam Lomar, a person should say, Hashem took me out of Mitzrayim. Chayav, and it's an obligation. Because if you don't have that, how are you going to be a good Jew? If you don't understand that Hashem wants you to serve Him, and you're not a slave to the world, only follow HaKadosh Baruch Hu, if you don't know that, then what are you doing? Then you're not going to want to grow. And the whole point and purpose in this world is to want to grow and close to Hashem. That's what that God that says, Chayav, you're obligated to tell yourself, Hashem took me out of Mitzrayim. And that's the whole tachlit of Leil HaSeder, to remind ourselves we're here to serve HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Thank you so much for listening.
You've just experienced another Torah class brought to you by TorahAnytime.com.